Okay, now we're here for the really big story. The real thing I've been telling you about this whole video series adventure. The heroin addict. Oh, this guy, he really gave me some hard times and tried to get his way, but in the end, he lost and Loudmouth Tim won again. And I got a lot of good satisfaction out of him. This episode might be a little bit longer, but I'll try to keep it short and give you all the details as fast as I can. So, let's step back for a minute here. When the girlfriend beater beat his way on the cops out of the apartment and into a jail cell, his girlfriend and mother came with their helpers and they moved all his stuff out. I took a little bit of time, like a week or two. I cleaned up the entire apartment. I made a couple of small repairs. And then, as far as I was concerned, it was ready to rent again. And then I had a couple move in, a male and a female in their very early 20s, moved into the apartment. They had a 1 year lease, they paid in cash, and they were good renters. A few times during the year, they would pay me half the rent now, half in 2 weeks. But for the most part, they had the rent on time. There was never any problems, and things went well. At the end of their 1 year lease, they said, "Hey, we want to move down closer to Pittsburgh. We have a place we want to move to, and so we're not going to renew the lease." And well, okay, no problem. Thanks for being here. Thanks for taking care of the place. Thank you for giving me all this money to essentially help buy the house for me. And that's it. Have a nice day. Thanks for being here. So they left the place. Again, I did a little bit of cleanup. There wasn't much to do. And I had it advertised again. And then, oh, here we go. The heroin addict came in. He had called me up about the place. He rolls up on his motorcycle with his girlfriend to come look at the place. His name was Jason. That is his real first name. And at first, they were pretty normal looking people. He was the same height as me, but he was really skinny, half my weight. And they come in, look at the place. He talked very positively, very energetically. Yeah, this is my girlfriend. We've been doing this, we've been doing that, we've been changing things. Here was the funny part. We have a 5 year plan. Right. Anyone who has a 5 year plan has done a significant amount of losing in their life so far. Hi, GD. How you doing? Thanks for coming in the chat here. Yeah. So anyhow, yeah, he has a 5 year plan. He used to be a cell phone salesman for a cell phone company. He's getting back into that line of work. He's thinking positive. He's been doing good. He's been trying to do better. And the whole story they always want to give you to give the most positive impression possible. So okay, they looked around the place. They liked the place. I looked at their background, criminal history. They had an eviction like 6 years ago, and I didn't like that. But a couple of little things like domestic disturbance, like they got in a fight or something like that. But nothing I was too concerned about. There was little things along the way that I should have listened to, and I didn't. I ignored it. So finally, we get to the day they have their cash for their first month's rent and their down payment, their security deposit. And I meet the guy there to sign the lease. And we're out back of the house on top of a table, and we're filling out every page of the lease, initial, and everything. And while we were there, I'm looking at this guy. And this guy, he's the same height as me, and he is really super thin. And I had the thought in my head, either this guy is lucky to be that thin or he's a drug addict. I was hearing these things in my head and I didn't listen. I should have listened. I should not have let him in. So as soon as all the papers are signed, it's official. Here's your keys. Here's your apartment. Oh, hey man, one thing. A buddy of mine is moving to place, and I know how you said you don't want any dogs here or any cats. I understand that, and that's no problem. But he needs a place to have his dog just for a week and a half, just till he moves and he gets his dog back at his new place. Just a week and a half only, and I swear it'll be out of here. Are you okay with that? No, I'm not okay with that. I do not want a dog in here because nothing good can come of this. But they just moved in. Okay, maybe he means what he says, a week and a half. And I said, now, a week and a half. I'm going to be checking in a week and a half, So, But they got their lease, their keys. They moved in. You know, the first month's rent was paid, second month's rent was paid, and everything. So one day, 2 months later, I'm coming by the house as I do on random occasion. I go in, I walk down through the basement, look around. That's a common area. Check and see whatever, no problem. And I hear on the wooden floor right over my head, you know how it sounds when a dog is walking around the house? I hear a dog in this house. There shouldn't be a dog in this house. You said a week and a half. It's 2 months later. Why am I hearing a dog in this house? So, get up there. And of course, I go up there and, boom, boom, knocking on the door. What's going on? I hear a dog in there. What's going on with this? And his girlfriend was there, and apparently she knew nothing about this whole 1.5 week thing because she's like, what? What are you talking about? What? So I ended up using, she's like, hold on a minute. I have to get this. I have to do that. So finally, I'm waiting like 10 minutes. Okay, here I'm out. I'm knocking on the door. Okay, I'm going to come in there. I got my key here. So I come in there, look around. Yeah, it's just this really old German Shepherd over there. This dog is all really old. He was sick. He could just barely even pick himself up to move around the place. He's old. He's sick. He ain't supposed to be here. Why is the dog even here? That is a problem. That is a lease violation, and so I'm going off on this, because you got to make a good impression with these people. The first time they screw up, you got to get them and say, you ain't going to get away with this, someone's watching, someone's listening, someone's paying attention. So he wasn't there. And so it wasn't until, I think it was a few hours later that day that I got a call from him, about what's going on. You're over there at my girlfriend's house. So, well, where were you at? And this is, because this dog ain't supposed, this dog ain't supposed to be here. You said a week and a half, and it's 2 months later, and this dog is here. Why is the, I forget what he said, but it's some stupid excuse. He's out of town right now. He can't come home right away. Whatever the problem is. I'm in my training class for my cell phone job I'm getting. No, well, I found out soon after he was off in drug rehab. Yeah, he was already screwing up. At this time, when the heroin addict moved in, I was still on reasonable terms with the pothead upstairs. It was a few months later that he decided to quit paying his rent, and things went downhill real quick. But the pothead had been telling me, hey, I was downstairs in the basement, and he had a couple bags of stuff, and I looked in one, and there was heroin in that bag. And they had been playing cards, and the guy was doing really good in the card game. And he went to the bathroom, and he came back like 15 minutes later, and he was all, all drugged out, all half asleep, couldn't even hold his head up. These are the stories I'm hearing from the pothead while we were still on good terms in the first, September, October, November of 2020. Yeah, 2020. So, okay, his story's falling apart. It was really interesting to talk to this heroin addict guy because he always had a reason. There was always a story. Yeah, man, that thing didn't happen out, but I'm starting a new job next week over here, and it's going to be a really good job for me, and I feel good about it. And whatever. Well, in the subsequent months, this guy went through 6 or 7 jobs that I knew about in about 6 or 7 months, including one of them was at a machine shop. Well, of course, as he was there for a couple of weeks, he was all happy about it, but I'm going to give him a drug test. I'm not going to let a drug addict run a machine shop, a lathe or anything. You're going to get yourself killed. So he was on there real quick. That was the funniest one of the whole bunch. He was going to go work at a cell phone store. He was going to go work in a supermarket doing night stock. He worked for a while at a place where they rebuild and remanufacture big 55-gallon barrels. That was their industry, was cleaning up barrels. And to hear him tell it, and the pothead also worked there for a while too. They worked there together for a little while. To hear them tell it, they would get in barrels. All kinds of toxic chemicals were still in the barrels from every kind of thing that was stored in barrels, and they didn't have any kind of gas mask or respirators or gloves or anything, and they'd get all these barrels in and have to wash them out and take them in, and the machines roll the barrels around and reform them into their original barrel shape if they were banged up or dented or whatever. So anyhow, he always had an excuse. It was always next week. I'm starting this job next week, and I'll have my first paycheck in 2 weeks, and we'll have the rent paid in full, and we'll be ahead of schedule on the rent. This went on forever. So he had moved in September of 20. And, his cock and bull story, to put it in the simplest terms, went on every month until April of 21. And when it come to April, he couldn't pay the rent at the start of the month. And he had some, my brother's cousin's sister's daughter's boyfriend's dog, whatever, this, that, some excuse. The bottom line was they didn't get the rent paid on time at the start of the month. Now, they were all these months, they had been like, half the rent now and half in 2 weeks. And the rent was getting paid each month without going into the next month, but not by much. And when it comes to April, it's like the first week of April, the second week of April, I don't got no money. If you can't barely pay the rent under normal circumstances, how are you going to get the whole month's rent paid in here in the last couple of weeks? So it was probably late April. I was over there. I was going up the stairs to the second floor on the side of the house, looking through the stairs at them. And he's arguing with me about it. Oh, Martha, I said we're going to have it here. And his girlfriend comes out and she says, hey, Jim, we already paid you the first part of the month. I said, no, you didn't. I have not gotten anything for the month of April. He hasn't paid anything so far this month. And she's all like, what? Looking at me? What are you talking about? Looking at him. What's he talking about? He hasn't paid. What'd you do with the money I gave you already for the rent? So he hurried up and he rushed her back in the house and slammed the door. And I go up into the upstairs apartment, which at this time was empty because I had just kicked out the pothead. And I hear them down there, and she's screaming and shrieking. And he's the kind of guy in an argument, he'll be yelling out his sentence. And then at the end of his sentence, oh, that big grunting, oh, he's like, he's gonna hit the wall, and then, oh, it was just funny. I heard one huge slam of the bathroom door downstairs, and this went on for about 10 minutes. She's screaming, she's throwing a fit. He's like, ah! You can't really hear their words through the floor, but you hear there's yelling going on. Ah! 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 Slam! So, okay, how much am I going to have to fix in this apartment when they get out of there? So this went on for a good 10 minutes, and finally I quieted down, and I was just doing my stuff upstairs for a while, walking around, knowing they could hear me walking around. I'm kind of walking kind of heavy upstairs. Yes, I'm here. I'm aware of what's going on. You are late in your rent, and we all know it. So, things went rapidly downhill by this point, and by July, he was evicted. And let me think, what other details can I give you in the process of this? There really wasn't anything he could say. We went back to the same magistrate. I had my list of violations of things. He's not cleaning up after his dog. That's a lease violation. The dog is here. That's a lease violation. And this went on for when the dog was really old and really sick. And by the end, this is an old, like a black gray German Shepherd, and it could just barely pick itself off the floor and barely walk at all. I wasn't mad at the dog. I didn't hate the dog itself, but the rules were no animals in the house. You brought one in, you lied to me, you tried to hide it, and the rules are the rules here. I got to enforce it somehow. So, oh yeah, we're gonna take the dog to the vet and have it put to sleep. Yeah, but that's like $300. Well, anyhow, finally, they got rid of the dog probably about May or June, I think it was. And of course, they weren't paying any rent by this point because, oh, wow. So we ended up in the magistrate. Okay, I had to sign the papers and put the notice in the door, and they had to have their thing. And now there's a 3-week delay because I signed their 10-day notice to leave and pay their rent, but I didn't have someone else sign it as well. Yeah, now you tell me. Why didn't you tell me this in the first place? So 3 weeks, we have to come back in 3 weeks and continue it. And having been here this first time serves as official notice of their 10 days to pay rent. A lot of frustration, a lot of wasted time because I knew they were leaving. They knew they were leaving, and they were just dragging it out and trying to live there for free as long as they could. So eventually we got the whole court date done. Okay, they are evicted. They have 2 weeks to appeal it. I looked up the information on appealing it, and I almost wanted them to appeal it because in Pennsylvania, for them to appeal an eviction, they would have had to put money with the court in the amount that they owed and then keep paying rent money to the court each month while the whole appeal was going on. And I could go to the court and claim that money and get it. So please go ahead and appeal it. I'll get that money. They ended up not appealing it. So we had the date come. It was sometime in July that they were going to be leaving. And in the subsequent week or two before they were about to leave, I had been going by the house just for, cutting the grass or other things. And one day I come by and I see a newer motorcycle in front of the house that was not there ever before. And it's like, he's on the porch. Is that your motorcycle? Oh, don't worry about it, man. Oh, yeah, you got money for a motorcycle, but you can't pay your rent. Don't worry about it. It's none of your business. Oh, I did the same thing with him I did with a pothead. I would just say stupid things and completely contradict myself a week later. And, I would just play dumb. Yeah, thank you, Riza Motori. Yeah, I would just play the psychological games with them. You're the dumbest landlord in the face of the earth. You can't remember what you said from a week ago. No, I would just say little things that, I would make myself look stupid and let him get all worked up. Oh, no, I said that. You didn't say that. I'm just enjoying the show. Go on, get your blood pressure out there. I'm not going to get any money out of you, so I'm going to at least have this fun. So it came down to about a week before the day they had to leave by. I had already talked to the local constable, and the constable knew him already, and they had talked on the phone, and they knew we were coming on a certain date to put him out the door the hard way. And I was leaving the house one day, and he was on the front porch, and, I had mentioned his motorcycle again. Like, don't worry about my motorcycle. Oh, your motorcycle? Oh, okay, I see, yeah. And he comes over across the front yard to me, and he stops about 3 feet away, looking right in my face. Hey, you know what, man? You know what? We're going to leave you such a mess in this house when we leave here. Yeah, well, I expected that. Leave a mess in the house. I'm just worried about the apartment itself. Don't go punching holes in the walls or breaking the doors or the windows or things like that. I can clean up a mess. And so he left. He turned around. He started walking back to the porch. I said, hey, I got to tell you one thing too. Hey, you want to? I'm not going to clean anything. I have a cleaning crew who's going to come in and do all the work. I'll pay them. So I just negated his whole thing. He thought he was going to get me on leaving a mess. Well, I wasn't going to clean up anything because I didn't want to. I know some people who wanted to make money. Here's some money. Clean the place. No problem. I can do that now. And ultimately, when the people did clean the place, I told them he was a heroin addict, so be careful in there. They did find 8 needles in the place, and it was a mess. They had everywhere in the apartment, stuff was thrown all over the place. The walls weren't damaged. The paint was okay. They didn't spray paint on the walls. They didn't break any windows or doors. So once we cleaned the place up and give it a good bleach washing of everything, not a big deal. A little bit of cleaning up, a little bit of repairs here and there, and it was all right again. And he thought he was going to get me. He thought he was going to have his way, and he didn't realize he was dealing with LoudMouthTim. And so ultimately, in the end, he was out, and he has a fresh eviction on his record. That was the thing with this guy. Talking to this guy, you couldn't talk to this person because he only wanted to hear what he had to say. And when it came time for me to say my thing, I better get it out in half a sentence, because by the time I get a full sentence out, he's interrupting. Oh, no, that's not right. That's not right. You're crazy. You're the worst landlord in the world. Yeah, I'm a very bad landlord in that, I want the rent on time. I make the rules in the lease, and I expect them to be followed. Oh. Wow, we're at 19 minutes already. It did not seem like 19 minutes. All right, we're coming down to the pretty much end of the story here. But oh boy, the heroin addict. I don't want to say it was, it was invigorating, and of course I learned more things. What to put in a lease, what these people are going to try to say and do when they know they're facing eviction. They're going to try to say, oh, well, you can't evict us because this. You can't. The lease doesn't say that. The lease says this. Okay, well, whether you're right or wrong, I'm listening. I'm learning from what you think is right, and I'm going to take note of that in future leases. And it's going to be written extra pages with all these little things, accounted for in there. Loudmouth, do I change the locks after I evict somebody? Yes, I do. I always have to change the locks. I have to do that. A few times I could reuse a lock on a different apartment, but for the most part, just go to the store and get a new set of locks, and then just put a new set in. You're done. No problem. Let's see. Well, I think that's all my important points I had to make. I don't know whatever happened to the heroin addict and his girlfriend after they left my place. Some people said he moved back to Ohio. Someone said he moved down towards Pittsburgh somewhere. He could go live under a bridge for all I care. He had his motives. One more thing about him. I had talked to the constable on the day before. I was going to meet him there at 7 o'clock in the morning to throw him out and change the door locks. And we got there right at 7 o'clock, and I met him, and he already knew me. And well, he didn't know me. He already knew the renter, the heroin addict. And so this was not going to go with the heroin addict's way at all. We knocked on the door. He's not there. We opened the door with the key. He's not there. He's gone. The house is a mess. All his stuff is gone. The lady next door came out and said he had just left about 20 minutes ago, and he was carrying 4 duffel bags while riding his motorcycle. I don't know how you do that. I hope he crashed in the thing. But I never saw him again. I never heard from him again. I talked to the neighbor who during this time, I had a neighbor who was a pretty cool guy, and he talked to him and worked with him in some kind of a drug rehab thing, and they kind of hung out together because of that. And he would tell me how this guy would come and go on his motorcycle multiple times throughout the day, or even in the middle of the night. He would leave and come back in 10 minutes, things like that. Oh, yeah, there's some drug activity going on here. Well, I was already on good terms with the neighbor, and he even told me himself he was happy to be rid of him, and he really enjoys it now that we have a single, nice, quiet person living in the apartment. I feel better. He feels better. The neighborhood is a better place. But oh boy, dealing with this heroin addict, what an adventure that was. Don't want to do it again. I'm going to be a little tougher and more suspicious when I evaluate people who want to come live in a house. Let me check the things here. Riza Matori, just a standard deadbolt lock. Look at the Home Depot or Lowe's. You have the key on one side. You have the twisty knob on the other side. Can't imagine why they wouldn't be available in Europe. I don't know. There are some double deadbolt locks where the key is needed on both sides of the door. But the standard deadbolt lock, a key on one side, a twisty knob on the other side, that's just a very common thing. I don't know why that'd be hard to get in Europe, according to some guys writing in the comments here. Well, okay, 23 minutes. Wow, this is a long episode. Yeah, the twisty knobs. That's just a common deadbolt lock here. Nothing special about that. All right, well, I think that's all for this episode here, The Heroin Addict. Boy, I got to see new things and experience new things, and I don't ever want to have to deal with that kind of a problem again. I handled it well. I threw it right back in his face with just pretending to be stupid and saying dumb things. And to a lesser extent, we had the text battles on the phone where I would try to type a little bit and have him type back a whole lot. He did it some, but not as much as the upstairs pothead did. And during that time I was doing these things with the pothead, I was still on good terms with the heroin addict. And I say, hey, look at what I wrote to him and hey, how much he wrote back. So he surely should have known what I was doing to him, or he was just so lost in his drugs and everything that he didn't think about it. So okay, I think that's about all for the story here. Was he really a heroin addict or fentanyl and opioids? I don't know. All I know is the one time the pothead had looked in one of his gym bags he had in the basement, and he said it was heroin. And I talked to the next door neighbor, and he thought it was heroin as well. And that was all I ever knew as far as details. I never saw anything myself in person, so I don't know. All I know is the cleaning crew found 8 needles in the apartment. So whatever you do with needles for drugs. Well, I think nowadays they mix in fentanyl with other drugs to make them more addictive, to get more repeat business. I think that's how it works. I don't know. I don't think anyone takes just pure fentanyl for the fentanyl. I think it's all cocaine that has heroin, heroin that has fentanyl. I'm saying it wrong here. Cocaine that has fentanyl, heroin that has fentanyl, meth that has fentanyl. I don't know. I've never been a drug user myself, so I really couldn't say. But the heroin addict, oh boy, what an adventure that was. So these are all things I have learned from in my time as a building owner / landlord, and experiences, life experiences to learn and grow from. All right, that's all for this episode. We're at 25 minutes, almost 26 here, so I'm going to cut it off here. It's been a long episode. Good job to anyone who stayed to the entire episode. I hope you enjoy this story, because it's been one I've been waiting to tell for quite a while.